Hello and welcome to the Replimat, a podcast taking us through Deep Space Nine, episode by episode, featuring a brand new viewer, me, Tim, and a seasoned fan.
Me, Andy.
There he is. You join us this week for episode 16 of season 1, episode 16, The Forsaken, directed by Les Landau, a story by Jim Trombetta, teleplay by Don Carlos Dunaway and Michael Piller.
Oh, cool.
There we are. Right.
Excellent. All right, so let's crack on. Tim, what have you been up to?
Well, this week, two things stand out. I've been watching Jabberwocky.
I saw that on
for the first time in ages. I haven't watched it for years. I've owned it. I've had it on DVD and watched it a few times, but I haven't watched it for ages. So that was brilliant. Just as much as anything, I was just admiring the cast. It's like a who's who of like British character actors from the period. It's just
how old is it then?
Wonderful. 77. It was made.
Oh, so almost as old as us.
So yes, indeed, it comes between. In sort of Monty Python terms, it comes between the Holy Grail and the Life of Brian.
Oh, it's a Python thing, is it?
And it's because it's
Terry Gilliam, as they say in America. Python.
Yeah, Monty Python. So it's, it's not a Monty Python film, but it kind of looks and feels rather like the Holy Grail, and it's got Michael Palin as the lead actor.
So it's kind of
Terry
like
Jones in it, and Terry Gilliam and Neil Innes and stuff. So it is very, very, very Python.
Kind of like the Horrible History crew, of course, that do Ghosts, and they've done Yonderland and a few others, and it always has that kind of vibe to it.
It does, yes.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So I've been watching that this week, and outside of that, and sort of ordinary, normal life, I've been reading Alan Dean Foster's Alien film novelizations.
Okay.
Not all of them this week, but I finished them this week. So I finished reading Alien 3 last night. And,
he did not do the last two? Or
he
last
did,
one?
He's done Aliens, Alien 3... he didn't enjoy doing Alien 3 because they wouldn't let him change the story. He wanted Newt to live, which I think would have changed too much of it anyway. So he turned down Alien Resurrection, and he also did Alien Covenant and a prequel to Covenant as well. He didn't do Prometheus. That I believe was written. That was novelized and only issued in Japan on a very limited edition. So I've not been able to get that, but
cool.
Certainly his Alien 3 novelization is probably the best version of that story. The way the film
is it close to the director's cut then?
It's basically the director's cut.
That's the only version I watch of it anyway.
In novel form, but it holds together, I think, a bit better than.
See, that's interesting because as far as I remember, I'm sure way back I probably would have read more of his stuff, but the only novelizations of his that I've read, certainly recently, were the Star Trek logbooks, where he's basically novelizing the animated series from the 70s, which is interesting because he does this thing where like each logbook contains, say, 3 or 4 episodes, because obviously they're only 20-minute episodes, so he has to expand somewhat. But he tries to have a through thread for all 3 episodes. So if you can tell, I think anyway, you can tell the stuff that he's added because it doesn't quite fit somehow.
Okay.
You can see this is the vibe I get. There's like he's not really a Star Trek fan. He's just a writer who likes Star Trek. So his interpretation additions are a little bit like. You don't quite know Star Trek, do you? But
he must be a bit of a franchise tart then, really, because
there are many of them.
He's also written some Star Wars film novelizations as well.
Of course, because he did some of
the original film.
No.
Lucas's name on it.
Oh, really?
And he did the Force Awakens.
Didn't he also do Empire Strikes Back?
No. That was Oh, I can't,
Somebody
I,
else.
I don't have it to hand, but no, he wasn't Empire Strikes Back. No,
Okay, well that's
so it's
cool.
just
Well, I've been reading since we're talking books. I'm still working my way through this one. I went and got them in our gap because I
oh
bought
yes,
some
yes,
visuals. I told you about this last week. Remember?
you did. Yes,
Yeah,
it's the side step before the next step,
yeah.
as it
It's
were.
basically like I explained to Tim like I explained to Tim last week. I really enjoy the film Clara's Heart, and I discovered it's a book originally. So I thought I'll read the book because it's always good to read the novels if they came before a film. And then I discovered that he did a sequel novel called In Clara's Hands, I believe it's called. So I thought, well, I'll get that, read that, get more of the story because I like the story. Um, only to discover, as I'm going through the first couple of chapters, that it features another character that's not in the Clara's Heart film or book. And I'm thinking, who is this character? It's written in the sense that I'm supposed to know who he is. I'm supposed to get this kind of connection here. And I wasn't. So I thought, bit of research. Oh, turns out he's a character from what I can only describe as, now having read a fair whack of it, I can now only describe as a very gay novel.
Right.
But apparently the author says he doesn't write gay fiction, he just happens to write, he's a gay writer who happens to have gay characters in him. It's like, well, based on this, I'm not quite sure you're being honest with yourself, mate. But yeah, because I've read a few gay novels back in the 90s when gay men's press was a thing. And this book would very much have fit that mold.
Okay.
It's it reads to me as a gay man or non-straight guy, whatever, finally able to tell a story that he kind of wanted to tell, and he has that kind of he's not applying the discipline that he probably apply to a non-gay novel to it.
Right.
So it's a little
Okay.
bit. I mean, as it says on the front, honest, horny, beautifully written. Horny in the middle kind of tells you everything you need to know about this book, really.
Yeah.
And it's not wrong, but it's enjoyable. It's kind of interesting that the lead character, protagonist Will, who is the co-lead in Clara's Hands, he's not a particularly likable guy. You know, complex, very dodgy, very kind of like little. Yeah, it's not unenjoyable to read, but it's very different to Clara's Heart. But
Mm.
I'm also reading because there's so many books to read because I have so many
The
books,
man
whatever.
reads more than one book.
I never used to be, could never do that. But recently I
No.
thought, you know what? It's like films and TV shows. If I can switch between, then surely it should be doable in book form. That's what I figure. So I basically read a few chapters of one book so I get a bit of traction. And then I go into another and go back for a bit. So I'm
Right.
reading very itty bitty. Can you tell what this is yet?
No, as long as it's not a Rolf Harris biography.
Almost as hard going, I imagine. It's
Right.
actually,
Oh yeah, Frank
yeah,
Herbert.
yes.
Yes, I know. I do remember you saying you picked
Complete
up a
with
copy of
flashing
it.
light. Look, my little ring light.
Yes.
Um, because
Reading June, and it's now July.
hey, yes, well,
Hey.
didn't I probably started this in June last year. Um, hey, I'm happy to nick your jokes. Uh, yeah, I was never been a fan of the idea of June because I remember watching the Fincher film and never liked it. Rewatched it, I think, last year.
Oh, was it a Fincher film? Was
I'm
it?
sure it was Fincher. Is that his name?
Okay. Yeah. No, I remember
Is it
watching it and
Fincher, the guy who
being
does
Carl
did
McLachlan.
Twin Peaks and that?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's him.
Because he did Alien 3, didn't he? So kind of bit of a
Yes, yes, he did.
circular circular conversation. That's good.
Hey, it all fits
Yeah,
together.
I didn't realise. I didn't
Um,
know that he directed it. But
yeah, yeah, he did. He was forced into it by all accounts, and apparently it's a horrible experience. He absolutely despises, and he doesn't ever like to be asked questions or talk about it.
no,
I've
same
heard.
with Alien 3.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Clearly, he's not a franchise guy. He likes to do his own thing, which fair enough. You know,
Mm.
some people are. Um, but anyway, so never just didn't get it because the
Mm.
films. I don't think the Fincher one is particularly good. I just maybe it was good at the time. I don't know, but couldn't get into it. But I did
Yeah,
watch, of course, the Dune they did last year. It was
right.
last
Which I
year. Was it
haven't
the year before
watched yet.
last or last year?
I think it was the year before last.
I
Yeah,
think, but I watched it, yeah, in the past year either way. So much enjoyed it. In fact, I recently picked up the 4K of it because I want to rewatch it. So I thought I want to watch
cool.
it in glorious 4K as well now.
Yeah, because part
Um,
two's coming out
yes,
soon.
well, this is it. I saw the trailer for that the other day, and it looks just as good to me.
Cool.
So that got me to like, I kind of want to explore the world more, but the way actually Herbert wrote it, because apparently this new version of the film is a very good interpretation of it. And now, having read the first half of the book, I would agree with that.
Cool.
Because the first film covers pretty much all the first half, plus a bit of the second part of the book. And so I've not
Right.
quite reached the point yet where the film finished. But now I know that the second film's coming and coming soon. Although I won't watch it until we get it on Blu-ray, so I'll be a few months out. That
Yes.
gives me a few months at least 4 months, I think, to finish this. But
Cool.
it's a
That's all right.
hefty tome, and it's very.
It is.
Have you ever read it at all?
No, I have the first three Dune books I think on Kindle,
Okay, I've got the
because
first
I looked at
three
it
or
and I thought
four.
my hand is going to get cramped
Yeah,
if it
really.
tries to hold that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I get
so
that.
I've got
So
it on
yeah,
Kindle, but I haven't got around to reading it.
so I'm the best way. I think with books like that, it's like a TV show that's quite dense or a film, whatever. It's nice to break it up sometimes because it's just
Yes.
so much to take in. And it's not that it's not good. It's enjoyable, all this stuff, and it's obviously a classic for a reason.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, it was written in the 60s, wasn't it? I think
yeah, like you know,
65, something like
it's
that.
interesting. I'm reading it, and I can see a lot of inspiration that clearly Lucas took for Star Wars. A
Right.
heck
Okay.
of a lot, because we know that Lucas pulled from a lot of people. Dune is clearly one of them. Dune, listen to me, going American. Dune, because we know how to pronounce U's. Um,
Mm.
and obviously the bassoon ones from Burroughs, the Mars trilogy stuff. He obviously just took a lot from that. I've got that
Right.
as well somewhere. I should read that at some point. I did start, but it's very of its time. But anyway, other than
Mm.
that, reading, I've not really watched much because when it's a work week, I don't really have time. Last time I
Well,
watched a film was last Saturday.
I said I
So
watched Jabberwocky, but I watched it in short bursts in the kitchen while I was doing
really,
like
ooh,
cooking and washing up and stuff.
I
So
can't
I
do
watched
that
it.
with film. I know people that do that. They've watched certain films.
I can with films I know, and
Well, yeah, I suppose
I
that's
know
yeah.
Jabberwocky, so I couldn't do that with a new film. No,
No, because
I'd
you
have to
just
sit down and
you
watch it.
you wouldn't be able to get it, would you? You
Yeah,
wouldn't be able to
exactly.
get it at all. But anyway, so yeah, so I've not really watched much, so I've got
Yeah,
nothing in that regard to say that is relevant to what we're doing
cool.
because
Fair
I
enough.
haven't had time. I mean, I've only thing I've watched this past week. I've been watching Battlestar Galactica still, and
Mhm.
I literally just finished Genesis season 4 today. So I've watched that like in that little gap of 2 hours I have between morning work, like editing and whatnot, and the main job in the afternoon, which takes me until like 10, half 10 at night sometimes. So I just squeeze one in between. I've been catching up with Holy Fools and Horses because
Oh yes.
as I mentioned
So,
to you before,
so you
the
mentioned
way
it
I
on
keep my
Instagram,
nice
yeah.
outlook is by having at least something comedy every day. Because just to remind you how silly life can be, you know. Um, it's interesting. I had a little gap between season 1 and 2, which I started
Right.
today. It's ooh, it's so of its time. So
Yeah.
it's like 81. It's very 81. And like the first few episodes, there was shocking amount of sexism in it. But again, it's the 80s. Racism. Um, what they say homophobia, but I call gayism because it's not really an irrational fear.
Yeah.
But that's a hate of mine. Um, there's a whole load of that in it. I mean, lots of not deliberately
Sorry.
not deliberately offensive jokes, but not aged well.
Yeah.
Because again, institutionalized racism and homophobia and stuff, you have to look at it in its context. You know, they knew no better really. It was all Once upon a time as gingers, once upon a time as Irish people, once upon a time as gay people. We learn, we grow, hopefully.
Yeah.
But it doesn't change the fact that beyond those little bits of issue, it's still really genuinely a very funny show and really
Good.
easy to watch.
Good.
And of course, having been a Londoner well, no, not at that time. I was a Londoner from 83,
Yeah.
but I spent like 18 years in London. So
Yeah.
just in terms of the culture that it portrays, it does it, I think, quite authentically. And it's very funny because I'm laughing because I'm like, yeah, I knew people like that. I absolutely knew people like that. So yeah, that's basically what I've been watching. Other than obviously my Monday to Friday post work watch of Prisoner Cell Cage.
Right.
Because
Yes.
yeah, I enjoy watching it. It's supposed to be high drama, big soap opera, but it's so much comedy these days because obviously it's aged in a very big way. And I remember watching it in the late 80s when we got over here, and it's quite
Yeah.
serious, but
It's
it's
not a program I've ever watched. I have to
really,
admit. Yeah. I thought an Australian drama about prison, like female prison, whatever, just didn't appeal to me at all.
it's,
So
I mean, it is ridiculous, over the top. It's, again, I'm sure at the time they thought they were dealing with serious issues, and they were in a sensitive way, but again, age changes perspective.
yeah,
And I'm watching, I'm like, wow, that's a subtlety of a brick through that glass house. But, you know, it was like that at this point, I'm in 1980, so even a year before Fools and Horses. And the acting is obviously not as. It's a style. Because obviously the 80s and the 70s and whatever, acting was a different style to now. Now it's way more natural because people obviously, even in the 70s and 80s, there was still a lot of hangover on people still getting used to acting in front of a camera,
yeah.
not acting on stage. So they're more exaggerated. They haven't quite worked out the nuance of what the camera can pick up. So I
Hmm.
think you kind of have to allow for that sometimes. But anyway, that's what I've been doing. Exciting stuff. I know it, but I'm sure you're all glad to hear that. Um, so yes, but let's get on to the Forsaken, shall we? Was it the
Yes, indeed.
Forsaken? Sorry, I mispronounced that. The Forsaken. My bad. I can never pronounce that word right. The
No,
Forsaken.
no, it's just
Okay.
pronounced as it's spelled.
Yes,
Forsaken.
the Forsaken. Okay, dokie.
Yes.
Cool. So, newbie, you can start.
Yes.
You laughed a lot. I can tell you
I
that much.
did.
In
I
his
did.
reaction, like every time I
This
looked at the camera, he's there chuckling away to himself. So
this was a great episode. Again,
I
I
don't
just
think, have we had a great episode from you yet?
I think no. I
Have you
think we
said
have had a
great
we
yet?
have had a few great. I'm sure. I'm sure we must have. But it was
Well, I'd go back.
this.
We've got loads of missing episodes, so I don't know.
This I think was one of those episodes, one of those stories
Mm,
that I think Star Trek does very well.
right.
Um, where you've got what's potentially a slightly ridiculous situation. Ooh, keep touching my microphone. Stop
You're not having.
touching your microphone. Got a potentially sort of heightened, slightly comedic situation that
Mhm.
then turns itself on its head and actually becomes something a lot more, potentially a lot more profound by the end. And I like the way it took the viewer on very much on a journey. Um, uh, all the stuff with Odo and Luxana Troy, who I recognised from next gen, aware of Majel Barrett being Gene Roddenberry's, if she's still alive, widow.
No, she's
Is
not.
she
She
still
died a
alive?
few years ago.
Oh, okay.
There was a nice,
Um,
just as an aside, there was a nice tribute to her in the most recent season of Picard,
okay.
where I don't want to tell you too much because that's kind of connected to this whole DS9 thing, but it's a bit at the end because I don't know if you were aware. Also, not only did she play Roxana Troy and obviously Chapel in the original series,
Yeah,
she
she
was
did the
also the
computer
voice
voice as
of
well,
the
didn't
Starfleet computers.
she? Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah, I did.
there's a bit at the end, near the end of season 3 of Picard, where you actually hear the computer voice.
Okay.
It's obviously archive stuff that they put together for the relevant sentence. And
Yeah.
there's a bit where Riker's like, I've missed that voice, and it's a nice
Nice.
moment.
That's
Bit too
nice. Yeah.
knowing, I suppose. Today, back in the '90s, it would have been a nice in joke that people, oh, did you mean so and so? But now, of course, subtleties out the window. So, but
Yeah.
it was still a nice little tribute to her because she was, for better or worse, a huge part of Star Trek up until I believe certainly Nemesis. So she was there. I may be mistaken, but I got a feeling she may have done some computer voices in the Abrams films as well.
Oh, okay.
I got a feeling she did. I'm pretty
Oh,
sure
nice.
actually. So she's got quite a Star Trek legacy
Yes,
hashtag.
indeed.
Um, but yeah, anyway. So yes. You
Yeah,
clearly enjoyed
all
it.
that. I did all the the obvious comedy situation. And as soon as they get trapped in the lift, you're like, oh, here we go. It's a standard kind of comedy trope.
Oh, absolutely, isn't it?
People being stuck in a
Yeah.
lift. Um, but it just from that point onwards, it stopped being it stopped being like a Whitehall farce
Mm.
and actually turned into quite a sweet um, drama.
Certainly
And
in the
then of course
last couple of
you get
scenes of it.
you get the sort of the return to the sort of nods to the Whitehall farce at the end when they come out as well, and her parting words. Um, but yeah, I found all that highly entertaining, but not in a sort of a superficial way.
Mm.
There's obviously I realised how little about Odo we know or we've
Yes,
known
still.
up until then, and that was definitely something that we needed to know,
Hmm.
and also the fact that Rene Auberginois is or was such an excellent actor as well.
He is. He's
He's
great.
you're invested in him in his performance
Well, you can
the
see.
whole way.
I think you can see that why they often paired. Why they obviously from the beginning they got that Quark and Odo will make such a great pairing because of the cast in there. As you say, Aubergine was, like we said during watching it, he's such a great straight man,
Yeah,
in the comedy sense. Um, and you pair him against somebody who's really very over the top funny, and his performance is even better because he absolutely knows how to really counter that. He does it with Quark all the time, and indeed does it with Quark and Roxana in one scene in the early part of the episode. You
yes,
know,
yes, this is true.
but it's funny. I remember. I mean, I always liked Roxana Troy. Literally since the first appearance in season 1 of Next Gen, I always found her quite funny. But I've become aware recently through social media and whatnot that she's much more of a polarizing character in Trekdom than I knew. A
Okay,
lot of people do not like the character; they really don't find it very funny. Um, but I always assumed everybody liked her because I thought, well, she's quite funny. But you all need to watch like there's an episode of Next Gen season 7, which is in between this and the next time we'll see her on DS9, before she will
right.
return. Um, and they do a serious episode with the character. It seems to me off the back of this one, somebody obviously saw those scenes and thought, "Ooh, she can do dramatic acting," you know.
Yes.
But I think they gave her too much of a serious role in the next time she appears on Next
Uh,
Gen, and it's like, yeah, but with all due respect to Major Barrett and everybody who loves her and whatever, you have to be honest and recognize the limits of her ability. And she's really good at over top acting. She's really good playing this bombastic, loud and life character. But give her anything really nuanced, and you see a few limits to her ability. Which,
Yeah,
that's just how it is with some actors. Some are great, some are not. And let's not be dishonest here. The only reason she got a role in Star Trek in the first place, both in the original series and in TNG, is because of her connection to Gene Roddenberry.
yeah.
There's
I mean, I've
absolutely
always
nepotism.
assumed that Loxana Troy was kind of
Oh,
created for her.
absolutely.
Yeah, I always assumed that she must have had some input
Yeah.
into that, and yeah,
But,
it plays to her strengths. Or
yeah,
the episodes I've seen, and I've seen a few next gen episodes with her in as well. Just obviously plays to her strengths as this is almost like a Dane character, just storming in and causing unfortunate havoc.
chaos.
Actually, one thing about this episode was she supposed to be part of that other delegation of three?
Well, I
Three
believe,
was she
yeah,
one?
because she was one of
Okay,
the ambassadors, so she was obviously one of
yes. So
these.
I
But
think
being
it
Loxana, she
may
went
have
and done
helped.
her own thing.
Well, yeah, I just think it may
Because,
have helped either at the beginning or the end to have perhaps seen her with the others. I mean, it wasn't too much of a stretch of the imagination to make that connection. Um, but it was, I just, where the other three, you got the other three all together all the time. Very much even just one of them wondering where Ambassador Troy
well, you see,
is, for example.
thinking
I
about it,
don't
but
think
maybe she wasn't
they
part of
did that.
it. Maybe she
Because
wasn't.
otherwise you've got ambassador, and then you've got these other ambassadors,
Hmm.
and it's yeah.
Well, I always assumed she was part of the ambassador delegation.
But then you'd have two appalling women
Hence why they had to
in
separate
that,
them, I guess.
because yeah,
Um,
you got Troy and I didn't catch the other lady's name, but obviously absolutely appalling person.
apparently, she's an
Uh,
artisan.
yeah,
I'm sure that's
but
what the Bolian called her.
she loves Julian at the end, so
Yeah.
that's that,
I mean,
that, that that's a lovely payoff as
well, the
well. I like
three
that.
ambassadors were obviously very stereotypes,
Yes.
absolutely. Which the story with Julian, it was only ever going to go one way. It was only ever going to end up with some accident happening
Yeah.
and then getting trapped, and then they all think he's wonderful. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, that all happens
Holidays
off
good.
screen because you see the
Yeah,
explosion, and then I
I
think
didn't.
we see him find a place to hide, and then we don't really see him again until they get rescued at the end.
I didn't mind that too much because,
Hmm.
to be honest, I was getting fed up with those three anyway. Not that it didn't spoil the episode for me, but I was just there's only so much of that kind of authority you can take before you just think, oh, for God's sake, somebody needs to go in there and slap them. Um,
And as you say, it's a
so
thing that's been done so much in
yeah,
everything, really. It's
yeah.
a huge trope. You know.
So I did like the fact that the last time we saw them, they were in peril and complaining,
Yes.
and then the next time you see them, they're coming out and they go, actually, yes,
Oh, he was
he's
amazing. Oh,
wonderful.
just Julian, please call
Yeah,
me so and so. Yeah.
yeah,
But in Finn, I like the because we've had quite a bit of Julian stuff recently.
we
So
have.
this is a nice little return to the naivety of him. Um, and obviously, and I like actually in this episode that outside of obviously Odo had a huge role. The only one who didn't have a big role in this, I think, was Kira. She was there.
She was,
She was
yeah,
there in
and
several scenes, but
Dax didn't have an awful lot to do as well, but I suppose
she was part of
she
O'Brien's thing,
contributed a
though.
bit more,
Yeah,
yeah.
but yeah,
Maybe,
like Cisco obviously had quite a bit to do with the Bashir thing, which is quite
yeah,
nice, knowing that he actually did this to Bashir very deliberately. And I'm
yes,
like, it's nice to
yeah,
see this slightly Not
Wicked side of him, isn't it?
yeah, I was gonna say not vindictive necessarily, or taking his revenge, you know, vicariously, but a little bit of a wicked side saying, well, Curzon did this to me, so
Did it?
my turn. Which Bashir worked out. But yeah, whenever we hear about Curzon, it's like, what kind of guy was this? Because he was an
Yeah,
ambassador and all sorts at one point, and he was clearly a rogue,
yeah, he
but a
does
very well
sound quite
respected rogue
manipulative
somehow.
and rogue. Yeah,
Mm.
I wonder if Kira. I wonder if Kira's role was kind of diluted slightly because of the other Bajoran on the bridge.
Oh yes, because I did point her out to you.
Well,
Um,
as soon as spotted her straight away. As soon as she appeared, I thought, "Oh, there's another Bajoran. That's nice," because I saw the ridges,
of
and I
course,
thought, "Oh, that's nice
yep.
having someone else on, another Bajoran on the bridge on that kind of command team or whatever."
I think it's.
Um,
I think her reduced role is probably more to the case of that she recently had progress, which wasn't that long ago.
yeah,
What was the last one we did? I think yeah, it was 2 episodes ago. I think because Wishes was in progress before, I believe,
yeah,
and that was obviously a huge Kira. I think when you go ensemble, that obviously expands in this, as you'll see with this show, because of the recurring characters, which we've only had a few of, but they will become really recurring. Pretty much gets to the point pretty soon, actually. I imagine season 3, where a lot of the recurring characters may as well be main characters.
main character. Yeah,
Um, I think when you're dealing with that many, especially back then when you got 26 episodes a season, it gives you a chance to actually have episodes for each of them
yeah,
where they don't all have to, be central every time. But I did like
yeah.
that this one, we've got to see more of those we haven't seen much of lately. I suppose we've seen a bit of O'Brien lately, but
We
even
have,
it,
and
I
I
also
don't.
like. Sorry, go on.
Oh, I was going to say I'm not entirely convinced about O'Brien at the best of times, but actually this was a good O'Brien episode.
Hmm.
Yeah, I find him annoying sometimes, but this was a good one. So
Yeah, I can understand that. As I said, I don't. I'm not. O'Brien is completely opposite to Troy, in that generally most of fandom seem to think he's amazing. I've always liked the character. But I've never been one of these fans who think, "Wow, he's amazing." He's a good character, and DS9 certainly brings him out. But he is a bit of a brown noser, as we've seen bits of already.
yeah,
Um, and he's, I suppose they're trying to make. I mean, I know the producers often say he's more of an everyman, and they like that, but hence why he's always got his sleeves rolled up. Um, but no, I think he's a decent character, but I don't think he's as amazing as some people would, think, and that's fine. Obviously, we all relate to different characters in different ways,
this is true. This is
but
true.
and that makes. I mean, I'm
That's why
sure.
there's a nice large ensemble cast
Yeah,
to
and
make
I'm
sure
sure
that
as this
there's
show goes on, there'll be characters that you're going to resonate way more than I will, or vice versa. I mean, it could turn out that you really end up really loving Bashir. I know, hard to
yes.
imagine, huh?
Well, we'll see.
Nothing's impossible, right?
Nothing's impossible.
Just
Yeah.
highly improbable. But yeah, I think I always liked this episode. I always liked it. I like the Waxana and Odo stuff that you mentioned. I think I like the comedy of it. I like I did mention that it sets up to be a real comedy episode, and though it kind of is, it's got a lot more to it as it goes on. And I think that's really played very well. The way it turns, it's very natural. It's not forced, and I do like actually because we mentioned the other day, or you brought this up, the last episode possibly, or the one before, I forget. The whole A and B plot thing, and in this one, there seem to be quite a lot of plots.
Yes, last week there wasn't a B plot at all.
That's right. Yes,
But yeah, there were a number of strands, a number
mm.
of plot strands this week.
But
I think,
again,
which
all part of the one at the end, and I think that's
yeah,
always where they work best, where you don't have an A and B totally disconnected.
hmm,
Oh, sorry, hands are gone.
yeah.
Not well. The camera's actually this wide, but when it's shared, I suddenly lose all my widescreen, so I'm now back to a 1980 screen, which you know is apt because obviously that's what DS9 is filmed in. What was I saying?
You were saying about the plot
Yeah,
strands and the way
they
they
all
they
yeah,
all come together
and I think
works.
that's a lot better narratively anyway. Certainly, when I write, as you well know, I've never been one to have an A and B plot that are completely disconnected. Unless you need to put a B plot in just to give other characters something to do, which, as you know, sometimes you kind of got no choice.
Yeah,
But
you
yeah,
do
I love it
need
when
to
it
make.
all comes together.
Yeah, you need to make them.
Mm.
Even if it's only obliquely, a B plot really should feed into some aspect of the A
Yeah,
plot.
at least thematically, if not directly.
Yeah,
Mm.
but yeah, you're right. These in this episode, everything just kind of came together nicely, and it was all largely connected to the computer, wasn't it, and
Mm.
the probe and stuff. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
it was
like it.
all
I like
great.
I like the O'Brien storyline. I thought that was quite fun. That he's still trying to get to grips with this station is kind of nice. Because I think they sort of, for quite a part of this season, they sort of almost forgotten the
With
situation
the
they put the characters
Cardassians.
into,
Yeah,
and how difficult things are for everybody. So they sort of forgotten about that. So it's nice to be reminded that they're still working out the kinks of this Cardassian monstrosity.
I mean,
Um,
it does provide some, ridiculous technobabble.
oh,
Yeah,
that's
and this
Star Trek.
episode was quite heavy on the technobabble as well, but I didn't mind that too much. I think it mainly comes. I think it mainly comes down to O'Brien, which is probably one of the things I have against him because he
He's a technobabble
he
man.
comes he comes up he comes out with stuff, and you think, do I actually believe that you know what you're talking about? I think sometimes it's just like he's saying words.
Hmm. But
Um,
it takes a skilled actor, I think, to
yeah,
do technobabble and really,
in a way that
you
makes
know,
it sound like they actually know what
yeah,
they're
it's like
talking. So
these are
when they
words I
say,
know. Yep.
you know, this technobabble in their head is
Mm.
you can see it in their eyes that they've got an idea of, and it's not just reaching over there and flicking a switch.
No, no, no. It's like when you talk about, or we talk about, like certain TV or computer things or writing, we come with all the buzzwords and technical words, and we know what we're talking about, and you can tell, hopefully.
Mm.
But yeah, it takes a skilled actor, especially in sci-fi,
To sell it,
yeah, to really make you think
basically
this
sell
is real. This is real terminology. This is not made up nonsense. I know some actors in Trek certainly find that difficult, and yeah, I'd never really noticed with Colin Meaney, but I suppose yeah, maybe there is an element of that.
it might just be it might just be me as a perception. Like you say, he's a popular character,
Mm.
and it's not all the time. It's just every now and again that he'll come out with something, and I think I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure that you know what that is or what that's
Yeah, I'm just
supposed to
not
be.
buying
And
this at
it
all.
doesn't quite sell it to me. But
Mm. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
yeah.
So this is one of those episodes, in the review
Yes.
sense, of we enjoyed it so much we don't have a lot to say about it other than say it's great. Yeah, that was brilliant. I love that bit. I thought that was awesome. I thought that the ones that have more issues or more bits where we're like, not sure about that, it gives you something to talk about. So maybe DS9 wasn't the best choice. Well, no, that's not true because I think as a series, as it progresses and starts to get really layered, there'll be a lot of thematic stuff that would possibly be some good talking points for us to really like get into. This one,
I was going to say, what about this episode was Forsaken?
yeah, I don't know. What is this Forsaken? I don't get the title at all. It's just
The Forsaken. Maybe
the
that's the name of the
Forsaken.
probe.
Was maybe. Did they actually mention the name of the probe?
No, they didn't. Only Pup.
Oh, Pup was the probe when they put it in, yeah, the kennel.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's what it was then. Maybe the Forsaken is the probe. It does happen. They've done episodes where the title, you're like, I'm not quite sure what this title is about. It can happen. Like they do, even in this show, and they do it in New Trek too much, where they use Latin titles. And
Ooh.
it's okay if it's something that you're familiar with, but sometimes it's so much, and you're like, I can't even pronounce this, and I don't know what it means. So what was the point other than
Yeah.
being pretentious? If you're going to make a title, then at least make it a title that the viewer would be like, I know what this means. And if it's an alien probe or something and it's called Forsaken, then at least have it in the text of the script so we're like, that's what the title is. So yeah, it's an odd one, isn't it? It's an odd title.
There is one slight possibility
Go on.
that potentially we've been mispronouncing the word throughout.
Well, what else could it be? The Forsaken?
Could be. Which is quite close to The Force Awakens, which is a different franchise.
Yeah, no.
Maybe that's where they got this title. Maybe they nicked their title from.
Or The Force Awakens we like that one. We'll adapt that.
J.J. Abrams likes this episode and thought, how can I reference my favourite DS9 episode?
Let's just throw a few letters in and see what I can make. It's a bit like when you have a word and you see what else you can make out of it. The anagram thing. Maybe. Anyway, so I think that's us pretty much covered on this episode. We think it's great. So what's your bottom line on this one then? It was great.
My bottom line is if you end up stuck in a lift with Loxana Troy, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, it's not necessarily. Well, I don't know, though. I don't think I'd get on with her. I think she'd be like so annoying. She'd be.
Oh, God, yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but when someone's that interested in you, even though you're not, I don't find that the sort of situation where you would be won over by that. In reality, I think you'd be like, you're kind of creepy and weird now, especially if you're locked in a lift with them. But obviously, it wouldn't be a good episode if that's how Dove took it, and it's nice to see a softening of it. So yeah, my bottom line would be, I enjoy this episode. I always have. I think it's a fun episode. Yeah, pretty much everything I've said so far. I just think it's a really enjoyable episode, and I think, and this may be controversial, but I think Loxana Troy fits better in this series than she does in Next Gen. She only has a few episodes, but those few episodes she turns up in, I think her and Odo surprisingly really work well as a pairing. Really well.
I thought they worked better than she does with Picard.
Oh, yeah. See, the Picard where she's chasing him thing, it's
It's
played for laughs, but again, it's still a bit kind of weird and creepy.
Yeah, I remember watching it when it was on first time it was on TV, like late 80s. Seeing it and thinking, "No, this is awful. This is awful," because it just and I didn't get the feeling that either Picard or Patrick Stewart were particularly comfortable.
And it's not just Picard she's after. She's after Riker. Literally, there's one episode in season 2 where she's in what they call the phase, which is like the sort of Betazoid menopause kind of thing where they're suddenly highly sexed. And she's literally after everybody. She considers Worf, Riker, Wesley almost. She goes, "Oh no, you're a bit too young." So she, but she still thinks about it. And she gets really fascinated by this guy in the holodeck because she can't read him, which obviously, as we know from this episode, is a big thing for her. She's endlessly fascinated by people she can't read.
In a bit, when I finish this, go and see Mummy. fine. I'll be out in a bit.
Yeah, people she can't read. I can cut
Right.
it.
Okay.
I'll try and cut it anyway. If I'm not, that was his son. I might lead it because I think live's kind of fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think she works better this way. I think taking her away from Deanna as well is, But then I know we were on final thoughts, but then I wonder, would it have worked so well had we not known her previously, even for
That's true.
yourself?
Yeah, that's true.
We've had that connection. Would it just been another annoying ambassador? I don't know. I think it works
Yeah.
because we know who she is.
I know.
That
I think you're
helps.
right. Ron. I
Yeah.
think otherwise, there's no. Yeah, because based on this episode alone, there's no setup or anything
No,
to it.
she just turns around and it's like, oh, it's Roxana.
Yeah, it's an
Which is
immediate
obviously,
assumption that the audience will know who this person is and what sort of person she is, and go with that.
it's like when Q turned up, obviously we know who he is. It's like what lots of new modern franchises do when they're doing legacy stuff. They assume you know who they are so they don't bother.
Yeah,
Which I think sometimes is not a good thing because, like I've always said, every episode of every show should still be trying to get new viewers, I think.
yeah. I mean, I suppose at the time, because Next Gen was still very much a live thing, and
Yeah, this is big season 6, so
then
still.
it's probably a fair assumption that there will be a reasonable continuity of
Yeah,
viewers from one to the other.
and
When you're doing stuff now regarding shows that were made 30, 40 years ago
yeah,
or more, then potentially that's more of a leap. But
then you're literally
then
just making for fans only.
that's
And
the
they wonder
danger.
why they're not hugely popular. It's like, because obviously fans think it's amazing, it's the biggest thing ever because you're a fan. But in the real world of actual economy, it wants to make money, and to make money, you need to go beyond the fan base, and the loyal fan base is not usually as huge as fans would like to believe.
Yeah.
You know.
So you've got to attract casual viewers as well, and if
Yep.
casual viewers switch on and go, oh, I don't know who this person is, but the program assumes I do.
So
Then
therefore,
they
I'll
make
just have to go with it then,
yeah.
or turn off.
Either they watch it and think I'll try and figure it out, or they just
They're
turn
like,
off
oh,
and
I watch
watch
something
something else.
else. I've done
Yeah.
that a few times. I've heard people going on about, oh, this is amazing. So I'm like, okay, I'll watch the one that's on tonight because I haven't got time to watch all the other one. And I'm like, nah, didn't get it. I can get the story, but there's obviously stuff here that I'm like, it means nothing to me because I don't know these people. But obviously, I'm meant to know these people. So yeah, I think it can be a weakness. But in this regard, I think it kind of worked. I mean, it worked for you because at least you had some knowledge of her.
Yes,
So
as a first time viewer, but with some knowledge of the Star Trek universe, it worked. It worked fine. So,
cool.
Cool.
Well, I think that pretty much sums this one up because you are apparently in demand.
I am. I've got to go and provide my sons with nourishment.
Oh, pesky life.
What have we got? What have we got next week?
Next week is now. I know I pronounce this word in my head, but I'm never quite sure if I'm right or wrong. It's either dramatis personae or it's dramatis personae. A-E at the end. So I'm not, I would say A, but it could be pronounced I suppose. Even E
I
maybe.
think I would say dramatis personae.
There we
Myself.
go. Either way,
But I may be wrong as well.
we may be both wrong. Maybe it's completely something else.
So
But that's what's next week.
The cast list next week then.
Hmm?
Okay. There's a cast list next week. Then.
Yes, there is. Honestly, I haven't seen the episode more than once. I'm not entirely sure the title applies any more than Forsaken does. So,
Right.
I don't know. Maybe we're in the era of DS9 where the titles mean absolutely nothing and they're just making it up.
Possibly. As long as it's not a holodeck episode where, or holosuite episode where everyone's wearing doublet and hose and
Hello, darling.
playing.
I have a meowing cat. Sorry, this
You're in
happened.
demand
It's
as
been
well.
a while, hasn't it? It's been a while since I've
It
had an
has.
interfering
I
cat.
know.
That happened right at the beginning of our podcast all the time.
Right.
But
Anyway, yes, we're
yes,
clearly in
yes, yes.
demand.
So
So,
next week
right,
is
yeah.
Dramatis Personae Ne. In the meantime, comment below, people.
Yes.
Please. It'd be
Yes,
nice.
tell us
We've
you've
had some
watched. We
feedback
can...
from somebody who's watched it, but it'd be nice to get some interaction, some traction.
Would.
Like and subscribe because apparently that is helpful to us. We can be caught on the social medias. Tim is on Twitter as
At Mr_Brell.
yes, and you can find me as at Frankham-Allen. Obviously, the Replimat is there as at Replimat1, the digit. And that's all our social media at the moment. One day we'll get onto other things. I keep saying this. And one day we'll step on my coffee. I keep saying that too. Until next week, then, people, I have been Andy, and he has been
Tim.
Yes, he has. So, bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye, Duggan.
Roger.